Hello and welcome to this James the Bike Guy, where today we're taking a look at the newly released Gen 4 variant of the Trek Top Fuel. They made substantial changes for 2025 in this Gen 4 with more capability, more customization, and a bike that sheds some weight while still getting even more rowdy. So in this video, we're going to get into those features and designs, what changed, and then of course, we're going to find out what this weighs, considering they're claiming that it cut weight too. Talking Trek Top Fuel. Now, the Top Fuel nameplate has really moved around in Trek's lineup over the past few years because when the Trek Top Fuel initially came out many years ago, it was an all-out race bike. It was a race XC bike with super short suspension travel, racy geometry, a little bit of a weird-looking frame, and over the years, it has evolved and molded into what is now more of a do-all lightweight trail bike. And that really, in my opinion, is an awesome evolution of this bike because Trek has taken their Fuel EX, the bike that used to be the all-round trail bike, and has really pushed it more towards the all-mountain or enduro side of things with even longer travel, lots of geometry adjustment, and it left this hole for a lightweight bike that could still tackle some descents and really enjoy pedaling around. 2025 Gen 4 is rocking 130 millimeters of front suspension and 120 millimeters of rear suspension. However, the bike can have a longer stroke rear shock added into this ABP platform to put the rear end up to 130, and then you could lengthen out the front shock to 140 and have an even more capable bike to soak up some bumps. Now, along with the adjustment of what you could do out back, you can also swap out this 29-inch rear wheel for a 650B wheel, which gives you mullet capability. And what Trek requires you to do that is to have the front end lengthened out to 140 and then have your flip chip put in the high position where right now we're in low, meaning that the bottom bracket would get raised up and in conjunction with that front fork be able to run that 650B rear end. Now, part of the reason you might want to do that is to allow the bike to be a little more rowdy, make that rear wheel tuck in just a little bit tighter, and then have the bike be more playful and able to be thrown around. But in stock geometry setup, the bike is coming more oriented to support pedaling up a hill, be able to be fast down a hill, but really an all-round, all-day ripper. Now, for geometry, decidedly modern. We're talking a head tube angle up front of 65.5 degrees in low and 65.9 degrees in high based on that minnow-link position. You've got a seat tube angle of 76.6 or 76.9. Again, quite steep, so getting you right over the pedals with that nice slack front end. And then you're talking a reach of about 467 millimeters in this size medium-large. Of course, the chainstay is reasonably tight at 439 millimeters, giving this bike a nice tight rear, a longer front center, and should allow the bike to be super playful, even though we're talking geometry that's going to be pedal efficient. Speaking of which, the rear end's geometry, your minnow link setup here allows you to be able to move it from forward and back, which is going to change the progressivity. In the forward position of that minnow link, the shock is set up where you have less progressivity in the bike, meaning that it's going to be a little more supple, a little bit softer. If you move that bolt position back, it's going to make the back end a bit more progressive, so there's better bottom out resistance. And speaking of which, Trek uses what they call their ABP suspension design, meaning that your chainstay and your seat stay come together on this back end around the axle, meaning there's going to be basically no brake jack, so adding the brake isn't going to increase or lock up the suspension. And it also means that the bike works like a modified single pivot, meaning that you're going to have some nice engineered in anti-squat to really make the bike feel like it's explosive when you're under pedaling. It's going to take a little bit away from, say, your curb, your straight 90-degree bump compliance, but everything aside from that should really add in the ability for the bike to be explosive, yet handle what's going on. And speaking of supple, this bike's going to come in 2 frame materials. The version we're looking at here is the Top Fuel 8, which is currently the least expensive variant of this bike at $3,999. Although I wouldn't be surprised if we see in the future a Top Fuel 7 or even a Top Fuel 5 to help bring down the price point, because the higher the number, the fancier the components. And that means that this bike is made out of what they call their Platinum Alpha aluminum. So it's an aluminum frame. They also have a carbon variant of this bike, 9.7, 9.8, 9.9, your different levels of part spec on that carbon frame. All of them come assembled in the United States and share this internal frame storage. So when you pop this door open, it comes off, and inside we're met with a upgraded bits bag. This is the bag that they give you to be able to carry all of your gear. You do have internal cable routing for everything. These are sleeved even on the aluminum one, which means just sliding the cable down, it's going to come out to where that cable was supposed to go. So no longer are you fishing for things, but it gives you room for internal storage. The carbon frame does have just a little bit more room than the aluminum does, but still quite a nice feature to have. And then of course the bottle just goes right onto that door. Super awesome to see that included. Now, being the 8, it is spec'd with a Fox 34 up front. This is using their Fit Grip damper, has 34 millimeter fork stanchions. You do have air adjustment on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, you've got adjustment for compression from all the way open to firm, and down on the lower fork leg, you do have rebound adjust. Another thing that's done away on the new Top Fuel is no longer do you have your knock block. So in older models, there used to be a frame limiter that kept you from being able to twist your handlebar all the way around. That is totally gone. Standard stem and aluminum handlebar on this puppy, with out back running a dropper seat post. Always a nice feature to have with that 1x lever. And that brings us to our drivetrain. This bike is a Shimano XT drivetrain for the most part. So we've got an XT shifter. We do have XT brakes clamping down with 4 piston calipers on the front and the rear. And then out back is your XT rear derailleur shifting through a Shimano SLX cassette and connects up to a Shimano Deore front crank. This is a place that I feel like they kind of almost, could have done better, I guess, because a Deore front crank, I really would have loved to see that, certainly as an XT to match everything else, but an SLX would have dropped some weight too and would have matched up with that cassette. Oh well, because you are still running that 10 to 51 tooth wide range 12-speed drivetrain, and the rear suspension is controlled via this Fox float rear shock. Nice thing with that shock, like I said, you can run a longer stroked version of this, and it is a metric size, meaning that the rear shock can be replaced with basically anything that you might want on the bike. Final thing to talk about is that this is running some Bontrager's new Line Comp 30 wheel, 30 millimeter internal width aluminum wheel. It does have 148 teeth of engagement in that rear hub, and tires are the new Bontrager Gunnarsson Pro tires in a 29 by 2.4 width, and of course tubeless ready. So now let's go ahead and find out what this bike weighs, considering they're claiming a loss of about 220 grams on average just from the frame set. And the actual weight of the Trek Top Fuel Gen 4 is coming in at 31.18 pounds. Thanks for joining me to check out the 2025 Trek Gen 4 Top Fuel. Go ahead and let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. While you're at it, be sure to hit the subscribe button and definitely browse the channel to see more videos like this to check out as well.